we're going to get into this subject matter of Governor Palin and the rumors about her divorce with her, of course, her husband Todd and all. We're going to welcome Dan Riehl in here in just a moment. Let me take just a moment and explain to some of the listeners why I have delayed this interview and delayed talking about this. It's really not real complicated. Before I get into that, Heidi, I placed a call to the Anchorage School District today because I wanted to confirm this issue about Mr. Griffin, Jesse Griffin, being an employee of the Anchorage School District and his position as a kindergarten teacher assistant. It is confirmed that he was an employee, but after of this, I guess you could say his outing, that Mr. Griffin has submitted a letter of resignation yesterday. And also, she noted, Miss Heidi Embley of the Anchorage School District noted, she has no record of any inappropriate actions on Mr. Griffin. I am not alleging either on this program that Mr. Griffin has done anything inappropriate at the Anchorage School District. Okay, now, why have I been reserved in coming out? In fact, Rishi, will you confirm this for me? There has been a complaint or so, I guess through Justin, that there was a listener who was angry or concerned or whatever because I have not come out on this issue and talked about it.
Well, someone had emailed him, and two people had contacted me on Monday wondering if we were going to actually cover the story, and I told them, for now, no.
Right. Okay, why? For one thing, to start this off, and Dan, let's bring Dan in. Dan Riehl with RealWorldView.com. Dan, welcome to the program.
Hello, Eddie. Thanks for having me. I hear this is something like Sarah Palin Central, so I'm flattered to be here.
Well, I'm honored that you think that, and I'm honored that people believe that. We've been called...
Well,
we've been called Governor Palin's pimp, too.
Well, I have a conservative audience, so they tell me you're the guy in terms of Sarah Palin in a lot of places.
Well, thank you so much, and we do try, and that is one of the reasons why is because, you know, someone told me earlier, a caller did, he says, well, Eddie, I'd much rather you just seek out the truth and stick up for us. And I thought, you know, that's a pretty brilliant comment, and listeners will always do that to me. So here was my reservations coming out. First of all, there's only two people that really know if someone's going to get a divorce, and that's the two that are married to one another, okay? Because only the two of them can make that decision, all right? Then I didn't want to get into it because I thought, why should I further a rumor and give it credibility by talking about it? And the other thing is there was the alleged part about this affair that went on 13, 15 years ago. Well, in all general speaking, there's only two people that know about an affair, not unless somebody joined them. So, therefore, I was reserved about getting into this, and the only thing, Dan, as you know, with your listeners or your readers on your blog and all, is credibility, right?
Exactly.
That's the only real thing that I have with my listeners out here. When we came on the air, when Governor Palin and this Troopergate was launched against her and said that she did things that were wrong and all this and are going to be impeached and, you know, and Hollis French brought up all this crap about the governor, I came to the airwaves and I said it's not true, it's not going to be true, and sure enough, it was shot down, and the governor had the worst thing that came out was that she didn't chew out her husband Todd enough, you know, keep him from complaining.
Well, I mean, I want to speak to two issues. One, just as a normal standard, you know, when it's Real World View, it's actually RIEHL, in case anyone's looking for the site Worldview.
Right.
But the other thing I want to interject, and it matters to your point, is I'm not a dope, and I'm nobody's stooge, so while not being in any way formally connected to the Palin camp, I have sources and ones I trust that have access to that. And I reached out first and said, hey, before I even looked at this issue, what's the story? Because I don't go out and defend things that turn out to be false.
Exactly.
All I can, based on my contacts, and I have two separate ones, everything I've been able to hear, directly, on or off the record, says that there's no truth to this. So I needed to hear that for myself. I'm not just going to accept something, and that's all I can say I know at this point.
And that's what I did, was I wanted to check with people who I trusted, who I've trusted in the past, and check with him and make sure. I've had one conversation with Jesse Griffin. I've invited him on this show. He has declined to do so, and that's his choice. All right. Let's see. So let's create this narrative here, and let's start from the beginning. The Immoral Minority, which is a website owned by Jesse Griffin, who was, until yesterday, an assistant kindergarten teacher in the city of Anchorage, published that Governor Palin was getting a divorce from Todd. He called it, and I quote, Splitsville. Now, I had a conversation with him yesterday or day before yesterday, and he says, well, I didn't really say they were getting divorced. I go, well, what does Todd and Sarah and Todd are Splitsville? What does that mean? Well, that means, divorce. I mean, they're splitting up. And I go, well, then, you didn't say maybe. In fact, the Alaska report said it emphatically. Todd and Sarah to divorce, period. And they're using the immoralminority.com. They're using their words and their tip. So take us from here. Kind of pretend that really nobody knows anything about this, if you will, Dan, and kind of take us along. The Moral Minority publishes this story. What happens next?
Right. Well, they publish it, and obviously it generates a lot of buzz. And anytime something in the blog is generated in the blogosphere, I'm a forensic blogger in some respects. I like to do research and investigate things, and anytime a story like that comes out, you want to look at it. So then, based on my sources, it appeared the guy was lying, or someone who he trusts played him. And I wanted to find out what the reality is. And the only way you can do that, I wanted to find out who the guy is and where's he coming from and what's he talking about. So you start, investigating. And, right now, the best I can tell, this guy has bogus, written so much all over him, it should be his middle name. I just have confronted one lie after another, frankly. So, now I see somebody who's starting to have a pattern of not being honest with me in email. He's lied, and I've caught him at it. And then he changes, and then you come back and push again, and he changes again. So I'm now looking at a story that supposedly has major import, and it's coming from a source I now know from personal experience that, I don't think I can trust this guy, so let me look at him. And, a couple things take out. Now, first, people have to understand the release of that letter was intended to be one more, where he did himself in.
Okay, well, let me back up a little bit. There was a letter that was sent from an attorney, Thomas Van Flein, to the Alaska report, saying cease and desist on behalf of Governor Palin. These are lies and cease and desist. So what they did was they blacked out some things and then posted that letter, right?
Right, and that's where he shot himself in the foot.
Exactly.
And I'm convinced he did it because he wanted what they saw in that letter. And and I did get an interview with Thomas Van
Flein.
And I said, tell me the story of that letter. And he said it's basically standard operating procedure. And he didn't, and that's really all he said. Now, I'm willing to, from personal experience with lawyers, to say, maybe he included the kindergarten thing as a way to shake this guy up. But the critical thing to know is that he sent it to him confidentially. So, because the next thing, there were 2 more attacks planned on the Palins. Then that's how these liberal operatives work. everything you give them, they immediately look at and say, how can I attack further from it?
Right.
So in looking at this letter, he wanted to hide his name because he's been claiming to be anonymous, even though technically he hasn't been for a couple of years. And they said, oh, look, he said kindergarten. So we can do two things here, you know. When the first one was, let's attack them for walking into a kindergarten and serving a summons, which, you know, as Van Flyne assured me in the interview, one, all he had to do was first take the story down to make this all go away.
Right. All right, hey, listen, I'll tell you what, Dan, we got to take a hard break right here. Let me take a break here. I'm going to make it quick. We'll come right back and go to the bottom of the hour. We're going to be all hour with you, folks. You need to listen to this. You haven't heard even 1/10 of the whole story yet. We'll be right back.